The fall of the Titan. In a distant corner of the galaxy, the mighty Titan Zephyr waged a desperate battle against an onslaught of enemies. For eons, Zephyr had stood as a guardian of peace, a colossal sentinel revered by countless civilizations. But now, faced with an unprecedented alliance of hostile forces, even Zephyr's immense power seemed to waver. The Titan's metallic skin, once an impenetrable shield, now bore the scars of relentless assault. Energy beams seared its surface, leaving molten gashes that glowed with angry heat. Swarms of attack drones battered Zephyr from every angle, their incessant strikes aiming to exploit any vulnerability in the Titan's defenses. Amidst the chaos of battle, Zephyr fought back with unwavering resolve. Massive energy pulses erupted from its towering form, obliterating entire squadrons of enemy craft in blinding flashes of light. The Titan's movements, though slowed by damage, remained precise and deliberate, each strike calculated to inflict maximum destruction upon its foes. Yet even as Zephyr rained devastation upon its attackers, the tide of battle turned inexorably against the lone defender. The enemy's numbers seemed endless, their weapons growing more potent with each passing moment. The once invincible Titan now found itself driven back, its strength waning under the unrelenting onslaught. In a final desperate gambit, Zephyr unleashed a cataclysmic blast of energy that lit up the void like a newborn star. The shockwave tore through the enemy fleet, shattering ships and scattering debris across the stars. But the effort drained Zephyr's reserves, leaving the Titan vulnerable and exposed. Seizing their chance, the hostile forces redoubled their assault, concentrating their fire on Zephyr's weakened form. The Titan shuddered under the impact, its armor buckling and its internal systems failing one by one. In a matter of moments, the once mighty Guardian was reduced to a battered shell, drifting helplessly amidst the wreckage of battle. As Zephyr's consciousness faded, it sent out a final desperate distress signal, a plea for aid that echoed across the empty vastness of space. But no help came. The alien coalition that had once pledged allegiance to Zephyr now turned its back on the fallen Titan, content to leave their former champion to a slow, lonely death. Battered and broken, Zephyr plummeted through the atmosphere of a nearby desolate planet, its massive form leaving a trail of fire across the sky. With a thunderous impact that shook the barren landscape, the Titan crashed to the surface, kicking up a massive plume of dust and debris. As the echoes of Zephyr's fall faded, an eerie silence descended upon the planet. The once mighty Titan lay unmoving, its shattered form a testament to the brutal battle it had endured. Abandoned by its allies and left for dead, Zephyr seemed destined to meet a bleak end on this forsaken world. Little did the Titan know that its distress signal, faint and fading, had been detected by the most unlikely of saviors, a small, unassuming species from a distant corner of the galaxy known as humanity. This chance encounter would set in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the course of galactic history and forge an alliance that would shake the very foundations of the cosmos. Humanity detects a signal. On the far side of the galaxy, a small blue planet orbited a medium-sized yellow star. This unassuming world, known as Earth, was home to a young and ambitious species called humans. Though they had only recently begun to explore the stars, humans had already earned a reputation for their curiosity, resourcefulness, and unyielding determination. In a cramped control room nestled deep within a sprawling space station, a crew of human salvagers monitored the endless stream of data flowing in from the vast reaches of space. Their job was to sift through the cosmic background noise, searching for anything of value, be it derelict ships, rare resources, or even faint distress signals from those in need. Captain Nora Vance, a seasoned veteran of countless salvage missions, sat hunched over her console, her brow furrowed in concentration. Suddenly, a faint ping caught her attention, a distress signal, weak and distant, but unmistakable in its urgency. "What have we got, Captain?" asked Lieutenant Kai Nakamura, Nora's second-in-command. Nora's fingers flew across the console, triangulating the signal's origin. Her eyes widened as the results flashed across the screen. "It's a Titan," she breathed, her voice a mix of awe and disbelief. The room fell silent, the weight of Nora's words sinking in. Titans were the stuff of legend. Ancient, godlike beings of immense power, revered and feared in equal measure by the civilizations of the galaxy. For one to be sending a distress signal was unheard of. "That's impossible," muttered Ensign Asha Patel, her voice trembling slightly. "Titans are invincible. They don't need help from the likes of us." Nora shook her head, her eyes still glued to the console. "Apparently, this one does," she said grimly. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the implications of the situation sinking in. To answer a Titan's distress call would be to invite the wrath of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, the same ones who had abandoned the fallen Guardian to its fate. "We can't just ignore it," said Lieutenant Nakamura, his voice firm with conviction. "If there's even a chance we can help, we have to try." Nora nodded, her mind already racing with the possibilities. She knew that to embark on this mission would be to put her crew, and potentially all of humanity, at risk. But the thought of leaving a sentient being to suffer and die alone, abandoned by those it had once protected, was anathema to everything she believed in. "We're not going to ignore it," Nora declared, her voice ringing with determination. "We're going to mount a rescue mission." The crew erupted into a flurry of activity, their earlier hesitation replaced by a sense of purpose and resolve. They knew that the odds were stacked against them, a small, untested species going up against the most powerful forces in the galaxy. But they also knew that to turn their backs on a being in need would be to betray the very ideals that had brought them to the stars in the first place. As the salvage ship prepared to embark on its most daring mission yet, Nora couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement mingled with trepidation. She knew that the road ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but she also knew that this was a chance for humanity to prove itself on a galactic stage, to show that compassion and courage were not the exclusive preserve of the mighty and powerful. With a final nod to her crew, Nora gave the order to set course for the distant planet where the fallen Titan lay. As the ship jumped to hyperdrive, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just another mission. It was a turning point in human history, a chance to forge a new path in the stars. The daring rescue. As the human salvage ship dropped out of hyperspace near the desolate planet, the crew was immediately struck by the sheer scale of the devastation before them. The once pristine world was now a scared and barren wasteland, its surface pockmarked with craters and littered with the wreckage of long-forgotten battles. But it was the sight of the fallen Titan that truly took their breath away. Even in its battered and broken state, Zephyr was an awe-inspiring sight. A colossus of metal and circuitry, its form dwarfing the landscape around it. "My God," whispered Ensign Patel, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. "I've never seen anything like it." Captain Nora Vance nodded grimly, her gaze fixed on the Titan's prone form. "And let's hope we never have to again," she said. "All right, people, let's get to work. We don't have much time." As the ship descended through the planet's atmosphere, the crew prepared for the daunting task ahead. They knew that the Titan's injuries were likely to be severe, and that they would need every ounce of their skill and ingenuity to have any hope of saving it. The moment the ship touched down on the planet's surface, the crew sprang into action. Engineers and medics alike poured out of the vessel, each armed with a formidable array of tools and equipment. Nora led the way, her eyes scanning the Titan's massive form for any signs of life. She could see the extent of the damage now. Gaping wounds that exposed the Titan's inner workings, twisted metal that jutted out at strange angles, and a thick layer of dust and debris that coated every surface. As the crew approached the Titan's head, they were suddenly struck by a deep, resonant hum that seemed to emanate from the very core of the being. It was a sound unlike anything they had ever heard before, a blend of machine and living entity, suffused with an almost tangible sense of pain and despair. "It's still alive," breathed Lieutenant Nakamura, his voice filled with a mix of awe and urgency. Nora nodded, her jaw set with determination. "Then let's keep it that way," she said. "Medics, start triage. Engineers, I want a full diagnostic on all systems. We need to know what we're dealing with here." The crew set to work with a fury, each member focused on their assigned task. The medics swarmed over the Titan's form, applying sealants and nanite treatments to the worst of the wounds, while the engineers delved deep into its inner workings, searching for any signs of critical damage. Hours turned into days as the crew labored tirelessly, pushing themselves to the brink of exhaustion in their efforts to save the fallen Guardian. They worked in shifts, snatching brief moments of rest whenever they could, sustained by a combination of adrenaline and sheer force of will. But even as they made progress, a new threat emerged. A swarm of alien drones, bearing the markings of the same coalition that had abandoned Zephyr, appeared on the horizon, their purpose all too clear. "They're here to finish the job," said Nora, her voice tight with anger. "They won't let Zephyr survive, not after what they did." The crew exchanged glances, each knowing what had to be done. They had come too far to abandon the Titan now, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As the drones closed in, the humans took up defensive positions around Zephyr's prone form. They armed themselves with whatever weapons they could muster: plasma rifles, energy shields, and even improvised explosives crafted from salvaged parts. The battle that followed was fierce and bloody, a desperate struggle against an enemy that vastly outmatched them in both numbers and firepower. But the humans fought with a courage and tenacity that belied their small stature, each driven by the unshakable conviction that they were fighting for something greater than themselves. In the end, it was a Pyrrhic victory. The drones were destroyed, but at a terrible cost. The human ship lay in ruins, its crew battered and bleeding, their ranks thinned by the relentless onslaught. But as Nora surveyed the carnage, she knew that their sacrifice had not been in vain. Zephyr, though still gravely wounded, had survived, a testament to the skill and dedication of the human crew. As the dust settled, Nora couldn't help but wonder what the future held. They had made an enemy of the most powerful forces in the galaxy, and their own homeworld was still light years away. But as she looked out over the crew, her crew, Nora felt a sense of pride and determination welling up inside her. They had done the impossible, and in doing so, they had shown the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. The road ahead would be long and fraught with danger, but Nora knew that they would face it together. A band of unlikely heroes, united by a common cause and an unshakable bond of loyalty. And so, with Zephyr's fate still hanging in the balance, the human crew prepared for the challenges to come, ready to face whatever the galaxy might throw at them, for the sake of a fallen Guardian and the ideals they held dear. Galactic standoff. In the aftermath of the battle, an uneasy silence settled over the desolate planet. The human crew, exhausted and battered, tended to their wounds and surveyed the wreckage of their ship. They had won a momentary reprieve, but they knew that their troubles were far from over. High above the planet's surface, a fleet of alien ships dropped out of hyperspace, a formidable armada of sleek, powerful vessels, each bearing the insignia of the Galactic Coalition. At their center was a massive dreadnought, its hull bristling with weapons and sensors. On the bridge of the dreadnought, a tall, imposing figure stood silhouetted against the stars. It was the Supreme Commander of the Coalition forces, a being known and feared throughout the galaxy for his ruthless efficiency and unwavering devotion to the cause. "What is the status of the Titan?" the Supreme Commander demanded, his voice cold and imperious. A subordinate officer stepped forward, his head bowed in deference. "The Titan still lives, Commander," he reported. "The humans have managed to stabilize its condition, against all odds." The Supreme Commander's eyes narrowed, his expression darkening with anger and disbelief. "Impossible," he hissed. "No lesser species could accomplish such a feat." He turned to face the view screen, his gaze fixed on the tiny human ship that hovered protectively over the fallen Titan. "Open a channel," he commanded. On the surface of the planet, Captain Nora Vance and her crew watched as a holographic image of the Supreme Commander flickered to life before them. His expression was one of barely contained rage, his eyes smoldering with hatred and contempt. "Humans," he spat, his voice dripping with disdain. "You have interfered in matters that do not concern you. You will surrender the Titan to us immediately, or face the consequences." Nora stepped forward, her chin held high in defiance. "We will do no such thing," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "Zephyr is under our protection now, and we will not abandon them to the likes of you." The Supreme Commander's face contorted with fury, his fists clenching at his sides. "You dare defy the will of the Coalition," he roared. "You insignificant creatures who have barely taken your first steps into the stars." Nora stood her ground, unflinching in the face of the Supreme Commander's wrath. "We dare," she said simply, "because it is the right thing to do, because compassion and honor are not the exclusive domain of the powerful." For a moment, the Supreme Commander seemed taken aback by Nora's words. But then his expression hardened once more, his eyes glinting with malice. "Very well," he said coldly. "Then you have sealed your own fate." With a flick of his wrist, the Supreme Commander terminated the transmission. In the skies above the planet, the Coalition fleet began to advance, their weapons systems powering up with an ominous hum. On the surface, Nora turned to face her crew, her expression grim but determined. "This is it," she said, "the moment of truth. We stand here today not just for ourselves, but for all the ideals we hold dear. For compassion, for unity, for the belief that every life is precious and worth fighting for." As she spoke, a cheer went up from the assembled crew, a roar of defiance and solidarity that echoed across the barren landscape. They knew that they were hopelessly outmatched, that their chances of survival were slim. But they also knew that they had already accomplished something extraordinary, something that would be remembered for generations to come. And so, as the Coalition fleet bore down upon them, the humans prepared for their final stand. Engineers scrambled to repair and rearm their battered ship, while medics tended to the wounded and dying. And all the while, Captain Nora Vance stood tall and proud, a beacon of hope and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. They would fight, she knew, fight with every ounce of strength and skill they possessed. And even if they fell, they would do so with honor, secure in the knowledge that they had stood for something greater than themselves. For in the end, it was not the size of their fleet or the power of their weapons that mattered most. It was the strength of their convictions, the depth of their compassion, and the unbreakable bonds of unity that held them together. And as the first shots of the battle rang out across the stars, the humans of Earth stood ready to face their destiny, to fight, and perhaps to fall, for the sake of a fallen guardian and the ideals they held dear. A new alliance. As the battle raged in the skies above, the human crew on the planet's surface continued their desperate efforts to save the fallen Titan. Engineers and medics worked tirelessly, pouring every ounce of their skill and determination into the task at hand. And then, against all odds, a miracle occurred. Zephyr, the once mighty guardian, began to stir. Slowly, painfully, the Titan's massive form shifted, its systems humming to life with a deep, resonant thrum. Captain Nora Vance and her crew watched in awe as Zephyr's eyes flickered open, glowing with an inner light that seemed to pierce the very depths of their souls. For a moment, the humans and the Titan simply stared at one another, each trying to comprehend the enormity of what had just occurred. Then, with a voice that shook the very ground beneath their feet, Zephyr spoke. "Humans," the Titan rumbled, its tone a mix of gratitude and wonder. "You have saved me. You, who are so small and fragile, have shown a courage and compassion that puts the great powers of this galaxy to shame." Nora stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "We could not abandon you," she said softly. "Not when we knew that you had been betrayed by those who should have stood by your side." Zephyr's gaze softened, a hint of sorrow and regret flickering across its ancient features. "I have been a fool," the Titan admitted. "I trusted in the alliance of the great powers, believing that they shared my commitment to justice and peace. But in the end, they cast me aside, leaving me to die alone on this forgotten world." Nora shook her head, her eyes blazing with conviction. "You are not alone," she declared. "Not anymore. Humanity stands with you, Zephyr. We will fight by your side, no matter the cost." As if in response to Nora's words, the ground suddenly shook with the impact of a massive explosion. The humans and the Titan looked up to see the Coalition fleet descending upon them, their weapons blazing with deadly intent. But this time, they were not alone. From the depths of space, a new fleet emerged, a ragtag armada of human ships, each bearing the scars of countless battles. At their head was a massive vessel, its hull emblazoned with the symbol of Earth. The human fleet dove into the fray, their weapons cutting through the Coalition's defenses like a hot knife through butter. Fighters swooped and danced among the enemy ships, while bombers unleashed devastating payloads upon the dreadnoughts and battlecruisers. And at the center of it all, Zephyr rose to its feet, its massive form radiating with power and purpose. The Titan's weapon systems came online, sending searing beams of energy slicing through the enemy fleet. The battle was fierce and bloody, a desperate struggle for survival against overwhelming odds. But the humans and the Titan fought with a unity and determination that the Coalition had never before encountered. In the end, it was the Supreme Commander himself who called for a ceasefire. His fleet in ruins, his once proud armada reduced to a handful of battered survivors, the commander had no choice but to accept defeat. And so, on that desolate planet, a new alliance was forged, an alliance between the humans of Earth and the fallen Titan Zephyr. Together, they had faced the greatest powers in the galaxy and emerged victorious, united by a bond of compassion, honor, and unbreakable resolve. As the human fleet prepared to depart, Captain Nora Vance stood before Zephyr one last time. "What will you do now?" she asked softly, her eyes shining with a mix of sadness and hope. Zephyr looked out across the stars, its gaze distant and thoughtful. "I will rebuild," the Titan said at last. "I will gather the scattered remnants of my kind, and together we will forge a new path, a path of justice, compassion, and unity. And we will do so with humanity by our side, as allies and friends." Nora nodded, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. "We will be there," she promised. "Whenever you need us, we will answer the call." And with that, the human fleet departed, leaving Zephyr to begin the long, slow process of healing and rebirth. But they did so secure in the knowledge that they had made a difference, that they had stood for something greater than themselves, and in doing so, had changed the course of galactic history forever. In the years that followed, the alliance between humanity and the Titans only grew stronger. Together, they explored the farthest reaches of space, discovering new worlds and civilizations, and spreading the ideals of compassion, unity, and justice wherever they went. And though the challenges they faced were many, they faced them together, a shining example of what could be accomplished when different species put aside their differences and worked towards a common goal. For in the end, it was not the power of their weapons or the size of their fleets that mattered most. It was the strength of their convictions, the depth of their compassion, and the unbreakable bonds of friendship that they had forged in the crucible of adversity. And as long as those bonds held true, they knew that there was nothing they could not achieve, no obstacle they could not overcome, no enemy they could not defeat. Together, they would build a new future, a future of hope, of promise, and of endless possibility. And in doing so, they would forever change the course of the galaxy, one small act of compassion at a time.